we are going to go ahead and get started here on this session, and people should be coming in shortly.
Cool.
So Erin Akins is from Davinas, which is one of our sponsors and supporters, and she is the e-commerce coordinator and sustainability specialist at Davinas North America. She works to expand sustainability initiatives both online and in salons, supporting Davinas's commitment to be the best for the world as a B Corporation and 1% for the Planet partner. Before joining the Davinas team, she worked with organizations focused on environmental sustainability, like Slow Food USA, where she was an intern a few years ago, and the Post Landfill Action Network. She's a graduate of New York University's Department of Environmental Studies. And she's going to tell us a little bit about what's happening with Davinas and their support of regenerative agriculture.
Thank you so much, Allison.
You're welcome.
Cool. All right. Hi, everyone, and everyone who is coming into the session right now. As Allison said, my name is Erin Aiken, and I work for Davinas North America. And actually, while I was an undergrad studying environmental science at New York University, I was an intern with Slow Food USA, and I worked with Anna on a lot of digital communications and had a great time getting to know the community that Slow Food is fostering around all of these conversations related to agriculture and food within our country. So I'm excited to be back today with you all representing Davinas as a sponsor of the Slow Seed Summit. And I wanted to take this opportunity just to quickly share with you more about Davinas and maybe answer the question, why is a hair care or a beauty brand at a Slow Seed Summit or deeply involved or partnered with Slow Food. So we were founded in 1983 by the Bolatti family in Parma, Italy, which is a small city outside of Milan and also home to Parmesan cheese. Davinas is an international beauty company, and our products are all made in Parma with natural ingredients and really committed to scientific rigor and research for all of our products. We also work very diligently to make products that are carbon neutral, their packaging is carbon neutral, and they're produced with clean energy at our manufacturing site. We're also a certified B Corp and a benefit corporation, so our work is mission driven. And we strive to place social and environmental sustainability at the core of our ethos, dedicated to balancing both beauty and sustainability. So I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of what some of that work means to us. So one of the ways that we work to connect our products to our mission, let me go back one slide, there we go, is by supporting biodiversity through beauty. So just over 5 years ago, we relaunched our core essential hair care line in partnership with Slow Food International. So each of our product families highlights an heirloom ingredient sourced from a specific farmer in Italy. We're able to call out that farmer, the ingredient, and the region where it's grown on each of the product's packaging, sold in 90 countries worldwide, telling the story of each farmer and the Slow Food Presidium ingredient they are preserving on their farms. So in this example on this slide, I'm showing our new products, which are for folks who bleach or process their hair, but we're able to highlight the Fiesquetto tomatoes that are grown by a farmer named Mario Dilati in Carovigno. So then again, when we built our Parma office, which we refer to as the Davinas Village, we created a workplace that I showed you in the slide before that's immersed by our scientific garden, growing these same varieties all around our offices, our lab and manufacturing site, so that the work that we do there stays connected to our source ingredients and the foundations of our products and mission. Then in 2019, We launched our most sustainable shampoo called a single shampoo. And we worked with Slow Food again to help create a new Presidium for, and please forgive me if anyone speaks fluent Italian in the audience, they're called the Quatron olives from northern Tuscany. So for these products, we're able to connect stories around biodiversity as a foundation for sustainable agriculture to consumers in the beauty space who may not normally be engaging with these topics. So it's part of how, on a global level, we see how our role as a business can drive change and support both sustainability and community well-being. So taking it a step further, on our team in North America, we work to move forward these initiatives and keep them local by supporting sustainable agriculture in more ways. Our national campaign called Beauty from the Ground Up is in partnership with 3 CSA coalitions across the United States, the Fair Share CSA Coalition, the California Alliance for Family Farmers, and the Hudson Valley CSA Coalition, led by our longtime partners upstate at the Glenwood Center for Regional Food and Farming. So we work to share their mission of keeping communities healthy and connected to their farmers and making CSAs more accessible to all families. We're also excited to use our 1% for the Planet partnership as another way to further support sustainable agriculture by working with the Rodale Institute and supporting their research on regenerative agricultural practices, the role of agriculture as a climate solution, and their work connecting more manufacturers with regenerative growers and producers of raw ingredients. So as a beauty company centered around using natural ingredients, we know that our product is really only as good as the source materials, the active ingredients we're able to use. So we want to support keeping and sort of reimagining how agriculture can become a part of the solution. Also still really grateful for our partnership with Slow Food to continue to reinforce that as well. And again, to tie together our partnership with Slow Food and our CSA coalitions, we've connected the two and are so glad that 3 farms within our CSA networks will be starting to cultivate Arc of Taste seeds with support from Slow Food. So as of right now, Early Scarlet Horn Carrots, Jimmy Nardello's Sweet Italian Frying Pepper, and Aunt Molly's Ground Cherry will be planted in May for August harvest on farms working with our CSA coalition partners. So that's just a small taste, and we're so happy to be able to support the Slow Seed Summit. If you're interested in learning more about our work supporting sustainable agriculture or as a B Corp, I'll have a very nice breakout session during the 4 p.m. happy hour, and I'm happy to have more conversations if any of you would like to join. But I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon with Slow Food and with these leaders who are really on the ground working in this space around slow seeds. Yeah, and I will see you all around. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Erin. And also, Davinas has a booth in the expo. So if you want to find out a little bit more about their company, you can go to the expo. I just also want to say we were having some problems. I think Davinas is okay. Some of the videos were not playing correctly in the expo, so we're working on getting that fixed. But the expo is open through the entire summit, so you can check it anytime.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out with any questions. Thanks so much for your time, guys.
Awesome. All right, well, we're going to enter into our seed stories now. And as you can see, Bevan Cohen is going to be our moderator for this session. And he is a farmer and seed saver and author and herbalist and all kinds of great things in Michigan. And so he's a great person to help lead the session. And so I'm going to go ahead and let you take over, and I'm going to depart. And I just want to say that if you have any questions, please put them into the chat, and I'll be grabbing those questions and we'll answer them mostly at the very end of all of the speakers this afternoon, and our Q&A, which will start probably around 3:30.
Thanks, Allison. And hello, friends. My name is Bevan Cohen. I'm from Small House Farm in Michigan, and I'm super excited to welcome you all to the first annual Slow Food, Slow Seed Summit. We've got 6 days of fantastic programming lined up. We're kicking things off today with a panel on a very important topic, seed stories. You know, every seed has a story, and sometimes people merge with the seeds and their stories in a way that really changes them both. So today we're going to hear from some seed keepers and storytellers who are actively listening to and telling the stories of their seeds. Our first panelist will be Shiloh Maples from Midwest Indigenous Seed Keepers. Now, Shiloh is an Anishinaabe community organizer, educator, and food justice advocate. In her practice, Shiloh works in partnership with community members and local leaders from around the Great Lakes to build a more sustainable and equitable food system. For the last decade, she's worked with Michigan's Indigenous community to increase access to traditional cultural foods and create opportunities for them to fully practice their food ways in the urban landscape of Detroit. Currently, her primary work is with the Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance, where she's the Upper Midwest Regional Coordinator for the Indigenous Seed Keepers Network. Thank you so much for joining us today, Shiloh. We're really happy to have you.
Thank you, Bevan. So I'm going to share my screen here. So Buju, Bubunan Onkwe Indigenikas, Mishkwedese and Dodam, Anishinaabe and Dao, Ojibwe Odawa, Anishinaabe Aki and Donjaba. Hello, my name is Shiloh Maples. My Anishinaabe name is Last Winter Woman. I'm Turtle Clan, and I'm Anishinaabe, specifically Ojibwe and Odawa, whom are among the indigenous peoples of the Great Lakes region. And I've lived my entire life here in the Great Lakes region. When I introduce myself in this way, I'm sharing who I am. My clan tells you who I have kinship ties to and about my sacred role and responsibilities to all of my relations. My introduction tells you which indigenous nations I belong to. And I introduce myself this way because it reminds me who I carry with me, who my work is for, and who I'm accountable to. And it reminds me of my ancestors, who are the foundation of both my existence and my work, and it calls them into being with me. And this introduction also positions me in relationship to this place. It grounds me in the place that I call home. In essence, it grounds me in all these relationships that, and what it means to be a person of this particular place. The story I want to share today actually begins before I was born, with my ancestors' story and our sacred stories. It said that the first human was put down on earth where the fresh and salt water meet. And our ancestors lived there on the East Coast until a set of prophecies came to our people. And among them, it was foretold of newcomers and the destruction that would follow. It was said that our people would be destroyed if we didn't move westward. And our ancestors were told to follow the waterways until we found food that grows on the water. And so that's what we did, migrating westward until they came to the Great Lakes and found our sacred manuman, or wild rice, the food that grows on the water. And to tell my story, I must share their story. So I start with acknowledging them and their journey. But I also share this one story because it illustrates how, as Indigenous people, our identities, histories, spirituality, and traditions are inseparable from our respective ancestral territories. They're the very fabric of who we are, and the very fabric of who we are is defined by our relationships and our responsibilities to all of our kin, and all of those plants, animals, and elements that we live in interdependent, mutually beneficial relationships with. I also share this part of our collective history because just as our sacred foods and relatives led my ancestors to our permanent home, in a similar way, our ancestral foods have done the same for me as well. You see, on my maternal side, I'm the first generation in over 100 years to be raised by their parents. Over many generations, Indigenous communities have experienced disruptions and disconnection from our homelands and ancestral foods. And this has created social and institutional barriers to continuing our land-based practices. You see, food and land have always been weaponized against Indigenous peoples to coerce them into colonial agendas. And these are the origin stories of many of the social and health disparities we see today. For me, coming of age in a society that is largely unaware of Anishinaabe history, experiences, or customs, and being part of a family that was not able to give these parts of my identity out of no fault of their own, left gaps and questions for me. And these are actually, this is a picture of some of my ancestors there. My grandmother is one of the children in the front there. And at an early age, I began wondering, what does it mean to be an Indigenous woman of a particular place? And it's been a lifetime of looking for those answers. And for me, my healing journey from this historical and intergenerational trauma has been a lifelong process of remembering what it means to be a person of a particular place. And not just any place, but this place, the place of my ancestors. My journey has been a great awakening, an ongoing process of unlearning and relearning and reorienting myself to align with natural law and those original instructions that are our precious inheritance. And learning these cultural teachings and practices has been a profound process that has given greater insight into my role and responsibility as an Indigenous woman of this place. And our foodways and all of our relatives, both human and not, have been really instrumental in guiding me, for which I am ever grateful. In search of more answers of what happened to my ancestors, the social conditions that allowed these things to happen, and my own capacity, and really to build my own capacity to change the trajectory that our people have been put upon, I found myself seeking formal training in social work, specifically community organizing. And early on during this period of my life, I began seeing the healing potential that food held for individuals and communities. As I sought to learn my own history, I saw a clear intersection between land and food access, cultural preservation, and the well-being of our Indigenous communities. And I saw the ongoing impacts when these human rights are denied and people are disenfranchised. And I saw the weight that both my family and our communities bear from the ongoing spiritual and physical displacement from our homelands and the suppression of our sovereign rights as Indigenous people. This picture here on the right side is actually my great-grandfather who attended the Mount Pleasant Indian boarding school that was here in Michigan, where he was forced to take on the trade of a tailor, a trade that followed him for the rest of his life despite trying to move into other fields. And so in these early years of awakening to this path, there was many who didn't understand and discouraged me from focusing my professional practice on food justice. After I completed my studies, I went on to work at a Native American health center in Detroit. And for the last almost 10 years, I worked in partnership with community members to build a food sovereignty initiative called Sacred Roots. And for urban Indigenous people who don't have a land base nor the legal autonomy as our relatives who live in sovereign nations, we had to create our own definitions and means to be food sovereign. We had to find our own way to assert our rights and means for fulfilling our responsibilities as Indigenous people. And through our initial participatory planning process, I learned early that community members wanted access to traditional foods and support in growing them. However, many of the traditional foods that people wanted access to did not exist anymore in our communities. And I sent a letter out to a handful of Native food programs and shared the letter on social media, explaining what we were trying to do in our community. And I asked for their support in the form of donations of heirloom seeds. And I promised to care for them, safeguard their stories, and share them with the community through a seed library. But little did I know what door or future I was opening myself up to. Shortly after this, packages began arriving on my desk, and each one with a letter telling of its community of origin. And I kept records of these origins and their cultural stories that were shared with me. And at this point, I realized that my formal education had prepared me really well for the community organizing part of my work, but that I really didn't know the first thing about seed saving or the responsibilities of a seed keeper. But again, I had made a promise and I fully intended on upholding that agreement. And from that point on, I have been blessed to have had so many supportive and affirming mentors, both human and not, that have helped me to continue on this path. people like Rowan, who offered such a beautiful opening for us today. And each step I took into learning these teachings and skills related to seed keeping and our other foodways, the more I realized I was gaining a better understanding of myself as a Anishinaabe woman. And some call this process of revitalizing traditional lifeways decolonization. But in our worldview, my ancestors say this is just a process of us returning to ourselves. And as a part of my own process of learning what it means to be a seed keeper, I saw how vast this work is and that it can't be done by one person alone, nor is it meant to be. To help facilitate some of this intergenerational transmission of knowledge and to support my community, I started integrating seed studies into our gardening workshops. I was teaching community cooking classes using our traditional foods, and we always had a seed study as part of that, focusing on whatever food we were using at that class, and other seed literacy opportunities in our programming. And as we were revitalizing the ancestral knowledge and skills around seed saving, we were also, as a community, refamiliarizing ourselves with our plant relatives and their life cycles. Each year in our small seed saving garden, we grew out a couple of varieties to slowly build up enough to start sharing seeds with the wider community. And along the way, as I started to connect this larger ecosystem of Indigenous seed sovereignty movement, I learned a lot about Anishinaabe agricultural practices, which includes cultivating diverse annual crops in polyculture systems, or what some folks refer to as companion planting. One of the most well-known of these guilds is the Three Sisters: corn, beans, squash. And the Three Sisters garden in this way embodies interdependence. When they're planted close together, these sisters offer their unique gifts to the group. Corn, the oldest sister, roots herself steadily into the soil and provides a tall pole for beans to climb. And bean, middle sister, climbs ambitiously while fixing essential nutrients such as nitrogen into the soil, making those nutrients more available to the group. And meanwhile, little sister squash helps retain moisture, soil moisture, by shading the ground with her broad leaves, and her prickly vines help to guard the guild against pests. And in their interdependence, the Three Sisters show that when we're able to share our individual gifts with the larger community, we all thrive. I've also learned a tremendous amount about ancestors' extensive trade routes and the plant breeding knowledge that resulted in hundreds of regionally adapted varieties of these foods. And as many varieties of these crops exist, so do the variety of traditional stories and cultures surrounding them. And in that way, I feel like the practice of seed keepers also make us historians and cultural memory keepers, because we pass on these stories of how Indigenous peoples and their plant kin have evolved through millennia together on the shared landmass. As seeds are have been traded from, and still continue to be traded from hand to hand, community to community, finding themselves in new regions, the ancestral knowledge related to growing, processing, and cooking these plants traveled with them and continues to. And, the great Toni Morrison has said that when you get these jobs that you've been so brilliantly trained for, just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. And if you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else. So that's where I find myself now. This path has now led me to my current work with the Indigenous Seed Keepers Network. And as the Regional Seed Network Coordinator in the Midwest, I'm working in solidarity with Indigenous individuals, families, communities who are on a similar path. And together we're revitalizing these kin-centric food landscapes that Rowan spoke of, and reimagining what a regenerative economy might look like today. And offering my gifts to this movement has seriously been one of the most greatest honors of my life so far. That photo there in the middle that I'm sharing are one of my ancestral seeds, an Odawa bean. They're in the center. And we've been separated from each other for a really long time, but she's accompanying me on this path now. And healing, healing, and it's from this intergenerational trauma, and a lot of the things that Rowan was sharing is really hard in itself, but it's especially so if dominant systems continue to assault and create innumerable barriers to access medicine that you need. And the reclamation of ancestral lands and the rematriation of our seed relatives is really fundamental to healing, because without them, we cannot be people of a particular place. We are inseparable parts of one another. And the seeds have continued to care for us, but we have to be good relatives in return. And the indigenous food and seed movements recognize that revitalizing these foodways are essential to our survival, our cultural preservation, and our sovereignty. And for myself and many others in this movement, preservation of our foodways goes beyond basic sustenance. These practices are how we affirm and renew relationships, nourish our spirits, and be in balance with one another. And they're part of how we uphold our sacred responsibilities to our kin. And rematriation of ancestral seeds and seed sovereignty is vital to all of this. The stories that seed keepers carry are some of the greatest examples of indigenous resilience. And Anishinaabe people have been actively stewarding and managing this territory for as long as we've been here. And this territory was not some untouched wilderness. It was lovingly cultivated and fiercely protected by generations, and continues to be. And our seed stories honor the generations before us who safeguarded this sacred inheritance. And our seed stories tell narratives of people who have kept this knowledge, these foodways, and land management practices alive. And people whose names we may never know, but who were thinking of us. And these seed stories tell us of people who are doing tremendous work to both preserve and revitalize this knowledge today. We've all been impacted by ongoing colonialism and white supremacy. And it's stolen so much from each of us, and our stories and journeys to this place are deeply personal. But when we authentically and bravely show up in this work, especially with a fuller understanding of our own stories, we can see how colonialism and capitalism have attempted to alter the landscape of relationships into fragmented sectors and commodities. And this all has influenced how we relate to seed. And seed keepers steward these stories, but together we're all co-authoring this unfolding narrative. And I can't tell you what your role and responsibilities are, but I can invite you into this deeper work. So much of our healing, both with the land and amongst humans, is relational. And it's imperative that we find better new ways of existing with each other. And our collective existence depends on it. We all come from land-based practices and peoples, and I really feel like your ancestral seeds are waiting for you to remember them. For some of us, I recognize that this is much harder to do, and we can only trace our footsteps back so far. And my grief and compassion and solidarity with you is deep. But each of you can cultivate a deeper relationship with the place you live now and the web of relations that you share space with. Each of us that consider this place home have a responsibility to this place and to each other. And none of us here are responsible for the past, but we are responsible for the world that we leave to our descendants. And so now I leave with you with these questions to consider of how will you honor our seed relatives and their communities of origin in your own life? And what ancestral practices will allow you to be in good relationships with all of your relatives? Thank you.
Wow, Shiloh, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. What an example of taking the time to listen to the stories that the seeds share with you, and then finding a way to then share those seeds and stories with your community. So inspirational. If anybody has any questions for Shiloh, go ahead and put them in the session chat on the right part of the screen there, and we'll go ahead and we'll do some Q&A for all of the panelists at the end of the presentations. Man, that was really inspirational. That was great. Up next, we're going to have Jeff Quatron. Now, Jeff Quatron is an artist and heirloom seed activist who founded the Library Seed Bank, connecting the public to the local seed and agricultural history through the seed libraries that he's established in South Jersey. The iconic Jersey tomato is a focus of his work, and he'll be reviving 2 functionally extinct Jersey tomatoes this year. He recently launched a podcast about seed and food sovereignty called A Pod of Plant Propaganda. Thanks for joining us, Jeff. I need you to join us at the bottom here so I can let you in.
Here we are. Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Jeff.
Oh, hey, thanks, Bevan. I'm happy to be here, and thank you to Slow Food for providing the space for us to shape this summit, and thank you for everyone who's attending here. The story I'm going to tell you is about a tomato called the Killing Number 7, and it was really interesting that this whole thing started with an email that I got one day sitting in my cube at work, and someone emailed me, as my bio mentions, the Jersey tomato is the focus of a lot of work that I do, and Jersey tomatoes are very cultural here, and anyone from Jersey will claim that we grow the best tasting tomatoes in the world, and we do. And so I got this message, and this person was looking for seeds for a tomato that their grandfather had bred called the Killing Number 7. And she wanted to share her family's farming legacy with her daughter in the garden. And that was just, such a beautiful thing to read in this cube that I was in on this very boring day at work. So she mentioned the name of the tomato, and she said that there were some artifacts from her grandfather's farm, and there were these seed sacks that had the Killing Number 7 stamped on them, but there were no seeds. So I immediately started looking for the seeds, and I found them at the Sandhill Preservation Farm in Iowa, which is a wonderful farm, and they do great work. And they were the only commercial seed source available. And I was thrilled that I was able to find these seeds, and I was glad that they haven't disappeared yet. So I sent the link to my contact, and we talked on the phone. And I found out that her grandfather, William Bronson Keeley, received was awarded a National Farming Award in 1925. She had a copy of the newspaper article, and she was going to send it to me. And it was great. It was great to talk to her. It was great that she was able to secure these seeds and reconnect with her family legacy. So a couple days later in the mail, I get this photocopy of this article from 1925. And I was reading it, and the first thing that struck me was there was a photo of Willard receiving the award, and the award was presented to him in New York City. And at that time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the governor of New York, and he's the one who presented the award. So being an artist, my intuition was starting to get a little excited about this. And then reading through the work that he was doing in the community and how he was farming was really impressive. And this was an old newspaper when newspaper sheets were really big, and this was almost a full page story about him. So there was a lot of information in there. And I just felt that there was more to this story that I should investigate. So I went to the tomato was bred in Gloucester County, New Jersey. So I went to the Gloucester County Historical Society, and I started doing some preliminary research into, agriculture history in general to see what I can find about this. And I found an article from 2005, which was about the local crop history. And in that article, Willard Bronson Keeley was mentioned along with his tomato experimental farm. And they said that the Killing Number 7 was a significant tomato locally and somewhat national. And I got very excited about that because it was just, I love history, I love tomatoes, everything, you know, in my world's coming together here in this article. And I again, you know, being an artist and working intuitively, I knew that there was more to this. So immediately, the first thing that came to my mind was, I need to get in touch with the freeholders of the county and get this tomato declared an original heirloom of Gloucester County. I mean, that's just a natural progression in my mind. So a friend of mine was the mayor of this town that's the county seat in Gloucester County, and I asked her to how I would go about connecting with the freeholders, and she connected me with the freeholders office. So a couple days later, I get there's a voicemail from the freeholders office asking me to call, and I call and I talk to my contact there, and they're explaining the whole proclamation process, what it's about, and how it happens. And the closing statement on that was, but Jeff, we don't do proclamations for tomatoes, we do them for people. And I'm thinking in my head, but let's talk about this a little bit more. And then about a second or two later, she tells me, it's all based on research. So if you can find history and you can find justification for this, send it to us and we'll see what we can do. Maybe we can't do a proclamation, maybe we do a certificate of achievement. So I thought that was great. They were very open to, they gave me a shot, and that's all you can ever ask for someone. So I ran back to the Gloucester County Historical Society, and I did more research. And in that day, I found 17 pages of documentation about the work that Willard Bronson Keeley did with the agriculture history in New Jersey, and information about the Keeley No. 7 tomato. And it was very satisfying to see this and to realize that this farmer had such a big impact on the history of this county. And Gloucester County is, by the way, is where I grew up, and it's where I learned how to grow tomatoes in our backyard when my father taught us how to garden. So all this is really very personal to me. And so I took all this, scanned it into a PDF. I was so excited because I did this research on my birthday. Actually, that was my birthday present to myself, was to go and to do this. And I sent it off to the freeholders office. So about a week or two later, get another phone call. Hi, Jeff, please give us a call. And I call back, and the freeholders office was very impressed. They, no one that they had talked to within their circles knew about Willard Bronson Keeley. No one knew about this tomato. And they said that they would get back to me about whether or not this proclamation would happen. So then about 6 weeks later, I did get the phone call, and they did make a proclamation, and they recognized the tomato, and it is now declared an original Gloucester County heirloom. They also recognized the contribution of Willard Bronson Keeley to the history of agriculture in Gloucester County. And it was another funny thing about them going against their protocol was they asked me about where the event would be where they would read this proclamation. And I was like, well, that's a really good question. I really don't have one. But they were really great to work with. And I came to find out later from the Gloucester County Library System, who I'm now working with a network of seed libraries within their branches, that was really something that I got the freeholders to move so quickly on that. So kudos to the freeholders for them. And I asked them to print out 2 copies, one for me and one for the family that I can send to them. And when I went to the freeholders office to pick it up and I started reading it, they gave me my own whereas in the proclamation, which was really, it was very touching. And I was thrilled to read that. So when I said, thanked them for including me, and the response was, well, this is why we read these at events, so that people can recognize the work that you do. So the following year, in 2019, we actually had a reading of the proclamation at the launch of a grow out that I did with 10 growers in Gloucester County. And we were able to secure a nice amount of tomato seeds. And the tomato seeds are now going to be available to the, excuse me, to the seed libraries that I work with in Gloucester County. And we're keeping, we're going to be keeping a portion of them aside so that the seeds never leave home again. And it's really, it was a thrill, and it was quite a ride going through all this. And it's a great story that I'm happy to share. The biggest thing the thing that makes me the happiest though was to be able to connect the family back to the farming legacy. So, that's the story of the Killing number 7.
That's fantastic, Jeff. I got 2 questions right off the top for you. The first question is, why number 7? Is there a Killy 1 through 6?
I was never able to find that out. So I'm thinking that may have been the number 7 that he was breeding. I found a little bit more information from subsequently some other family members contacted me, and they told me that he was doing some experimental work for Campbell soup as well. And Campbell soup is a very interesting part of the Jersey tomato history here. Campbell's did have their own breeding program, and they bred their own tomatoes. So, but they also worked with some local farmers too.
And then my second question, and this is one that everyone may be wondering, how do we get some of these seeds, Jeff?
Oh, okay. Well, the Sandhill Preservation Farm, they should have some. As I said, they're available through the local libraries in Gloucester County, New Jersey. I have some myself. If you're interested, let me know. I know you are. I'll send you some, Bevan. Always sharing the seeds with you. And it was just a great story. It was a wild ride, and like I said, being able to reconnect this farmer with this family and their farming legacy it's a gift, and it's the reason why I do this work.
It's awesome, man. Congratulations. That's big stuff. And again, if anybody's got more questions for Jeff, put them in the chat so we can get them, and we'll ask them at the end. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. And thanks again to everyone who's come out for this Seed Summit. As Bevan said, it's the first annual one, and we look forward to more of these in the future. Thanks.
All right, up next, we're going to have Charlie Tennyson from Anarchy Acres. Charlie lives on a 4-acre animal-powered homestead in Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin. Now, using the power of sun, soil, and 3 donkeys, Charlie grows food for himself and the people and animals that he shares his life with. Although the farm saves and uses seeds for most of the plants that it grows, Charlie's real passion is heritage bred wheat. Since 2014, Charlie's been seeking out archival seed samples of traditional wheat grown in Wisconsin during the 19th century. The wheat's being grown out to market quantities and sold as stone ground flour on the farm's website, anarchyacres.com. And through Charlie's hard work and dedication, home bakers are rediscovering the lost wheat of Wisconsin. Thanks for joining us, Charlie.
Hey, Bevan, thanks a lot. That was great. I hope everyone can hear me. Give me this. Yeah, as Bevan was saying, I live on a little farm with some animals, and I've really gotten interested in the wheat of 19th century Wisconsin. We actually shot a full-length documentary of our harvest last year, and I want to show you a scene from it, and maybe I'll talk over it a little bit, and I'll just kind of get the ball rolling. But I want to tell you where the wheat that I love came from, how I've found it, and how I've been growing it out. So one thing that happens when you're working with archival samples is you have very small amounts and you have very large amounts. But this is what small amounts looks like. Okay, so again, that was just a scene from this documentary that we shot on the farm over the last year. But let me just back up and tell you heritage wheats, where it comes from, and my interest in it. I want to tell you where I'm coming from. I like to live a healthy lifestyle and grow as much of my own food as possible. I believe in preserving creation, stewarding it, seeking beauty and peace. And I love to explore and learn, especially from the past. I like to share and inspire. And I know that I have an awful lot to learn, and I'll be learning till the day I die. So hope those things come across as we talk about wheat. So wheat at Anarchy Acres, I got interested in historic Wisconsin wheat, and I was able to find some sources that gave me some clues as to what kind of wheat was being grown in Wisconsin in the past. And I've kind of, just as a matter of taste and aesthetics, I've looked for wheat that is the old wheat that has just been harvested every year. It's been selected and replanted by farmers and basically unimproved. Starting really in the 1870s, 1880s, you can find intentional crosses and people working on wheat to improve. And in general, I've tried to discard those and just focus on the wheat that, as far as I can tell, goes back thousands of years, just farmers growing it, planting it, harvesting it, and just doing it over and over. So there's that real connection. And I focused on these varieties here: Wisconsin pedigree number 2, Red Fife, Red May, Gold Coin, Haynes Blue Stem, Java. And it turns out that just by selecting the wheat that was grown in Wisconsin in 1850, I have magically also selected a great variety, a genetic variety. This actually has wheat from every genetic group. There are, and depending on how you look at it, there are 5 genetic groups of wheat. That's what this study showed. And I actually have a selection for every one of those 5 groups just by selecting what was grown 150 years ago in Wisconsin. This is what it looks like when you try to recreate a forgotten or lost wheat. First of all, of course, most of the wheat that I learned about from the 19th century is gone. You simply can't find that variety or type anymore. But you do get lucky. The USDA Small Grains Archive has a lot of old wheat, and it's free if you have a good reason for it. And this is what it looks like when you get it in the mail. Kharkov happens to be a Russian wheat that may have been planted in Wisconsin back in the 19th century. They send you about 100 seeds, 5 grams. And you can see in this photo, there's looks like a 3x3 or 9 plots there that I planted one year to grow out, to begin the process of growing out this wheat. And you can see there's even a couple of black spots. Not all the seed that you get from the archive is good at all. It usually is about 50% germination. And you can see 2 of them were actually 0. So those, I guess, are lost completely. But you start growing it out, and it's nice working with the wheat because it doesn't cross easily. You know, corn is a pain because the pollen grows around. Wheat is self-pollinating, and it's fairly easy to keep pure and straight. And you get some really cool rewards. Color is one of the most striking things that first came out of my test plot. You see, this is I think this is red Clausen we're looking at, and you get these beautiful red-colored stems. commonly, or yellow, and they're all anthocyanins. They're actually the same chemical compounds that make leaves turn color in the fall. It's a color that's always there, and it's covered up by chlorophyll during the growing season because of the green. When the green goes away as the plant goes through its life cycle, the colors underneath. And anthocyanins, by the way, are well-known antioxidants, and they may make the product healthier. So there's some of that lost color, which you see on the first day of life. This is wheat that's 24 hours old, just coming out of the ground. So why do I grow heirloom? Well, it grew well before the widespread use of fertilizer. It actually suppresses weeds very well because it grows tall, and it's, so it's better in an organic rotation. It seems to be more reliable year in and year out. It's never as good as modern wheat, but it also doesn't fail either. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. There's pretty good evidence that the roots go deeper and extract nutrients better. And overall, I just like the romance, the challenge, and the taste of growing something that's forgotten and very old. Also, what you see in modern seed, and I've looked carefully, by the way, I'm on the mailing list, and I'll see when Monsanto or somebody like that announces a new seed, I've never seen a brochure that a farmer gets that says that the wheat tastes good or is healthy. I've never seen those two things. It could be that the plant breeders work very carefully to make sure their wheat is healthy and good tasting, but I have never actually seen that on a seed brochure for wheat. And I don't know if it's on for corn or other stuff either, or soybeans. So that concerns me, and that's one reason why I'm interested in a wheat that I know kept a population healthy for thousands of years versus one that was just created in a laboratory 10 years ago, and we don't have a 1,000-year track record with it. I'm concerned that continuous focus on one or two desired characteristics can have genetic consequences in other areas. If you look at the corn brochure always says that it's antifungal. It's a big deal to be antifungal because they want the corn to be able to stand in the field and take forever to be harvested. That has benefits to the farmer. But I'm asking, do you really want to eat something that can sit in the rain for 2 months and not rot? My gut is full of little bugs that are eating the food that I put in there. Why wouldn't I want that to also be something that could feed microorganisms that live out in my field? So I'm really concerned that the obsession with preservability makes the food less digestible. And I see that possible benefit in older wheats. So, and also, I know the corn people see this. Animal pests do seem to prefer heritage wheat and corn. I've had folks do this experiment where you plant some old corn in the middle of a modern cornfield, and the pests will find that old corn and they will tear it down. I've seen the same thing with my heritage wheat. I grew a French wheat 2 years ago, and I had a very small plot in the middle of a 10-acre field of wheat. And for some reason, all the birds in the area one day attacked and ate most of that old wheat that was just a small plot in the middle of the field. I find that very intriguing. Of course, the farmer's horrified by that because it means they got a pest problem. But why would pests prefer older varieties to modern varieties? Is there something we can learn from them? And is that a possible clue that the older stuff is healthier? Who knows? And also the last thing is modern flour kind of exacerbates the problem with wheat and health because it sits on the shelf for a long time. It technically goes rancid. That's why fresh wheat flour tastes so much better than the stuff you get in the store because it hasn't had a chance to go rancid. So I like to eat healthy food from wheat. This is stuff that I eat all the time here on the farm, pasta and muffins, and that's just some cooked berries over there in the right-hand corner. I can't live without pancakes or pizza, and I eat a lot of bread. And I think there's a healthy wheat out there, and I'm pretty sure it's in my field. So here's my information. If you want to get a hold of me, I'll put myself back on and just finish up. The thing I really want to share about old wheat is, first of all, it can be done on a small scale, and hopefully you saw that in the film. It's, today it's normally done with the big machines, and it's handled with large trucks and things like that. But for 10,000 years, people have been harvesting wheats with a knife, even a stone knife, and milling it and threshing it the way you saw I do it. You saw I did in the film. It can be done on a small scale, and it's a healthy part. So if you're already interested in heritage foods and old foods, consider adding wheat to that cycle in your garden. So that's what I wanted to have to say, and please put your questions in the comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm not alone here. That a man that plays the soundtrack for his own documentary, very impressive. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
If we were interested in seeing the documentary in its entirety, where would we go to find it?
Just watch my website, anarchyacres.com. It's in post-production right now. We've got a rough edit, and the musicians are doing the rest of the sound, because I'm not doing the whole thing. I'm just doing that part of it.
It was really, really nice. I'm really looking forward to that. I want to share a quick story of my own before we move on, very, very briefly. We grow a small amount of wheat here at our homestead, mostly for seed preservation purposes. And I got turned on to that at the Appleton Seed Library in Wisconsin. I was there for a seed swap, and they were selling Anarchy Acres pasta.
Good.
And I learned about that, and I thought I could grow my own pasta at my house, and it was revolutionary for me. So I recommend it to everybody, because like you said, you can do it in a relatively small space, and it is pretty easy to do.
Yeah, you really can. You really can.
So that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. We'll get back to you with some questions at the end, but I really appreciate that, Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
All right, up next, we have got Dr. Maymet Oztin from Two Seeds in a Pod Heirloom Seed Company. Now, Dr. Oztin is a Turkish seed saver and the co-owner of Two Seeds in a Pod, a family-owned small seed company that specializes in the seeds of Turkey. After transitioning from his engineering career, Dr. Oztin gardened, farmed, and grew seeds for 8 years in Tampa, Florida, and then moved to West Virginia in 2018, where he's been working on preservation and documentation of Turkish seeds and West Virginia's agrobiodiversity. He's also a service assistant professor at West Virginia University, where he works on topics related to the advocacy of food and seed diversity, small-scale seed production, and racism and discrimination in the seed industry. We're really looking forward to hearing from you, Matt. Once you join the panel here, I can let you into the room.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Hi, Bevan. Thank
Hello.
you all, Slow Food, for sharing this space with me. Here I'm gonna share my, hopefully, slide. We practiced this yesterday, and then, oh yeah, I see it. All right. So today I will tell you I will tell you a short story about why my field is my home. I wanted to begin with a short segment of the poem Black Earth, written by legendary Aşık Veysel and Anatolian Aşık, who's a traditional storyteller in Anatolian folk literature. And I feel Veysel, I see him very close to my heart, and his love, care, and passion for earth directly speaks to my practices as a seed saver. I am a Turkish seed saver and farmer who was born and raised in Turkey in a big city with access to cherry and mulberry trees in the backyard of the building. I lived with my family where I grew up, and trees that I had the joy of climbing with my friends in the summer. I grew up with stories about trees and flowers told by my father and uncle, both of whom were professionally involved with plants. Yet I never had the space to plant seeds or try to grow anything until I was 30 years old. I once was an engineer, and this is from my engineering years in East Lansing, Michigan. You can see me standing on the left. And I came to this country in 2006 on May 4th. And I can easily say that on May 5th, my search for finding the flavors of my mom's cooking and varieties of all the produce from my childhood began. This was a, I have to say, search full of frustrations, disappointments, and occasional success. In 2010, when I was done being a student, I moved to Tampa with my partner, and that was when I began gardening in our backyard to grow the perfect eggplant, because that was a challenge to find that quote unquote perfect eggplant in grocery stores. That perfect eggplant that would make the perfect grilled eggplant salad. And this is when I found seeds for Halep karası, an eggplant traditionally shared by Turkish and Syrian people, stewarded for hundreds of years. Then I became curious to see if I can find seeds for other eggplant varieties grown across Turkey. I was far, far away from my family and homeland, and I realized that summer that seeds connected me with them strongly. I didn't want to let this connection, this sensation of being so close while being so far go. I began searching for more seeds, not only eggplant, but others. I wanted to connect with them all. Topan of West Anatolia, Topak of South Anatolia, Snake of Muğla from West Anatolia, Edirne striped eggplant from northwest Turkey, Yamula of Central Anatolia, Manisas striped eggplant from West Anatolia, Bismil of East Anatolia. With every single seed, I was touching a town and walking in acres and acres of fields each seed is grown. It was fascinating. Then later that summer, I found out about the Turkey seed law that became effective in 2006. Article 1 here said that the purpose of this law is to improve the yield and quality of agricultural production and to improve the seed quality. Article 5 said that point forward, seed growers could only grow the seeds that are certified and approved by the Department of Agriculture. So bureaucrats of a government department would decide what seeds to be certified and which others to be left behind. I was angry. Farmers were getting older. Their children were leaving villages for other jobs in big towns. And what was going to happen to seeds if no one plants them and if farmers are not allowed to plant them? I felt responsible and I began growing more and more seeds of turkey, but there was a problem at the end of, I think, the first year I began this journey. We ran out of space in our backyard. And every day, seeds became a bigger part of my life and emotional space, pulling me away from my engineering career. Then one day, my partner and I decided to start a seed company so that I can grow all the seeds that need to be preserved and documented in larger spaces. I would eventually transition from engineering to operating a seed company as an immigrant farmer in 2013. That year, we connected with a local urban dairy farm that would share part of their land with us to grow seeds. And I was commuting about 2 hours round trip to this farm, but I forgot about all the commute, traffic, and the noise when I united with plants every day. It was like meeting one of my good friends who I didn't see in 10 years, but could resume my friendship with the minute we reunite, as we never were separated. Then on my way home at the end of the day, I would feel sad, but there was also hope that would bring me back to see them again the next day. Then in 2015, we leased 2 acres of land out of Tampa to grow more plants. I was commuting about 1 hour round trip this time to this land. Less time on the road, more time with plants, more plants, more work. This was also when I realized that many times in a day, I was having full conversations with plants in Turkish. Full sentences. How are you doing today? You did really good this time. Please let me know if you need anything. Don't be silly. Everything was fine yesterday. What happened now? Then in 2018, life brought us to beautiful West Virginia, where I now grow all my seed crops on a small farm where we live. Cultivate the Black Earth as the land's guests, thanking the land and its first and foremost stewards as a traveler who's just passing through, witnessing seasons, life, death, and everything else in between. I identify my field on our farm as my home. Not only I can connect with indigenous stewards on Earth in various parts of the world via the seeds, but also in a growing season, I can find a tomato from my hometown, a watermelon from West Anatolia, a squash from Northeast Anatolia, a cucumber from Istanbul, a bean from East Anatolia, wheat from Southeast Anatolia, where wheat was first domesticated in this field. So that is my home. And back in September 2017, when we were still living in Tampa, we had to go through Hurricane Irma. It was awful. 10 days of stressful anticipation of this scary event, idea of possibly losing our house or getting hurt, occupied our minds for days since we decided to stay with our cats rather than leaving the state. As we were getting prepared for this hurricane that would be expected to land where we lived, one of the first things I did was to pack all my seeds. At the time, my partner was working in an office on the top floor of a building on the campus of the University of South Florida. And we immediately thought we would take the seeds there. That building was like a shelter. Seeds would be safe there. But then seeds cannot live without their stewards. So I called my dear cousin in Turkey so that she would know if something happens to us, she can find all the seeds in that office to take them home with a note that addressed her. Hurricane passed and we survived with minimal damage, but once again, Mother Nature taught me something. She taught me that I can actually fit my culture, my traditions and country in a few bags and move them wherever I go. It was such a relief because I knew that as long as there's a patch of black earth where I can drop seeds, I can watch them sprout and grow and witness their life cycles season after season. Thank you for listening.
Hey, Matt, thank you so much. What a testament to the power of seed saving. Absolutely. That's a fantastic story. I got a question. West Virginia, were you able to find any eggplants in West Virginia that at all compared to all these eggplants you were used to?
Not really. And there's a beautiful yet damaging bug, flea beetle, that actually gives me a difficult time growing eggplant here. So it has been a struggle and challenge since we moved here. But I think undercover, it's possible now to grow it. So I'm learning still. That was a shocking event, seeing this bug eating enjoying the plants from fruit to the leaves, and so I'm kind of feeling a little bit nervous about preserving that eggplant collection, but I think we'll find a solution with the help of friends and other seed savers, and probably in a tunnel it will be possible to propagate more seeds from them.
Certainly, working together as community, that's the key to success for sure.
That's right.
But that's got to be devastating to see that happening. Absolutely.
It is. I miss my eggplant dishes. So.
Oh man. Well, I appreciate you sharing that story with us, Maymet, and I see a bunch of questions for you hitting in the chat box, so we'll bring those up after our next panelist as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Up next, we have Melissa K. Nelson. She's from the Cultural Conservancy. She's a native ecologist, writer, media maker, and indigenous scholar activist. She's the president and CEO of the Cultural Conservancy, which she's directed since 1993. She's a professor of American Indian Studies at San Francisco State University and has edited 2 anthologies, Original Instructions, Indigenous Teachings for a Sustainable Future, and Traditional Ecological Knowledge, Learning from Indigenous Practices for Environmental Sustainability. She has served on the boards of the Earth Island Institute, Pioneers, and the Center for Whole Communities. Melissa currently serves on the boards of the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center and the Sorgaria Te Land Trust. Thank you so much for joining us today, Melissa. Oh, hi, Sarah.
Hey there, Bevan. I am actually here to join Melissa as one of her colleagues and partners in crime. It's possible that Melissa hasn't quite clicked on that button yet, so we might give her another minute to do so.
Okay, fantastic, Sarah. I will introduce you real quickly. As I remember, as I just met you today, you are a gardener, dancer, a lover of all things green, and the chief program officer for the Cultural Conservancy.
Thank you,
Thank you
Bevan.
for joining us, Sarah.
I am. And just a quick nod to all of those that are joining us today as well. Maya Harjo, who is also another one of our beautiful native farmers and colleagues, was originally scheduled to join Melissa today for this conversation, but is unable to do so. So I'm here just as a wonderful way to step in and help continue those good conversations. So thanks so much for having us join.
We appreciate having you. If you'd like to go ahead and get started, I will let her in as soon as she clicks through, okay?
You bet, absolutely.
All
Well,
right.
thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to digitally see you all today as we continue to operate in this new world that we are all sharing in fun and exciting ways. Melissa has our slide deck. So in the meantime, I'm just going to kind of get started and tell you a little bit about our story. And I'm starting just a little bit with about the story of myself and how I came to the Cultural Conservancy, because in a way, it is a bit of the story of our seeds. I am of Yaqui heritage and Irish heritage, and those places do both meet in the soil. And it has been a good story that I have helped to uncover for myself through my life and really through my journeys in community and in direct relationship to land. As Rowan and Shiloh so beautifully started us off in conversations in the keynote today and then in our discussions today, as Indigenous peoples, we really do come from an original instruction, a place where we understand that as we have entered into this world, we entered into it as part of a larger circle, a whole ecology, a full system of knowing that was set up in a way that allowed all of us to thrive. It is not a system where one survives amongst others or where one part of that system elevates in its greatness. It is actually great in its completeness, in its full use of that system. And as Indigenous people, we often enter that way into all forms of our engagements in the world, even with our seeds and our lands and our foods. I had the pleasure of really working a bit more with Rowan and the seeds in the development of my master's thesis when I was in school. And as part of that thesis, married a bit of my cultural background and my background as a cultural artist and dancer with that academic awareness and that living biological world. It was an amazing bringing together of systems. And my thesis was really exploring seed songs, which in a certain sense was really understanding the cultivation of creation and part of that storyscape. In so doing, what I come to understand, and as you know, again, as Shiloh and Rowan and as Melissa will very soon also share with us, that really a lot of what it means to explore these systems for us, and as reflected also in the work that we do at the Cultural Conservancy, is what it means to bring back into access and living life systems for community, the relationship that we all have had with seeds. Seeds is not just about the growing of food. Seeds for us is about the knowledge system that houses nutrition, language, songs, dances, ecological maps, storyscapes that are grounded in our land sciences, our land stewardship practices, everything from how we engage in that natural system to how that natural system re-engages back with us. And that completion of that circle where we can grow an heirloom seed, a traditional seed from a cultural background inside of the landscapes that we have and bring that knowledge system back to life and allow a community to re-engage with the completeness of that system is a really powerful dialogue, as we're hearing from other people here in this storyscape. You know, Charlie was just talking about the importance of that relationship, what it meant to, as an individual, step back into the world of seeds and say, hey, I want to grow something that has 1,000-year history of nourishing and sustaining people, rather than something that might have been modified to fight off pesticides and fungus. Because let's face it, the insect family is part of our ecology too. If they don't want to eat it, why do we? Is there something that's saying there that is a story that we want to re-listen to? So that, in a sense, is the beginnings and the genesis of my integration into this story and into the work of the Cultural Conservancy. And I'll hand it off to Melissa from there.
Thank you, Sarah Miigwech. Can you hear me? Sorry for a little
Yes.
technical glitch.
No
All
worries.
good? Hi, greetings, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to share some seed stories for this wonderful seed summit, and big chi-miigwech to all the previous speakers, and for Rowan's wonderful keynote, and my Nijikwe Shiloh's beautiful Anishinaabe stories that really covered so many beautiful and profound teachings of Indigenous peoples' revitalization, and that our seeds are so symbolic of our ancestors and our future generations, and why being good caretakers and guardians of them for us is not just about nutrition. It's really a sacred act and a spiritual act that we take very, very carefully and responsibly. So, Bujun and Dinwe Maganit, greetings to you all, my relatives. Melissa Nelson and Dijini Kaz, Makunzi Gabawiki Dash Nindigo, Nin Anishinaabe Ikwe, Piju Dodame, Mikanak Waji Wing, Turtle Mountain Chippewa, Ninjun Jiba, Miyu and Miigwech. I greeted you in my Anishinaabe language, shared my native name and my clan, my Lynx clan, and that my native heritage comes from the Turtle Mountains of North Dakota. So I'm a descendant of farmers and berry gatherers and buffalo hunters on my Anishinaabe Cree Métis side from my mother. And I am a descendant of wheat farmers from my Norwegian father, several generations in the Turtle Mountains of North Dakota. So I grew up with farming traditions from a very early age, and have always had a fondness and love to get dirty. And actually I even eat dirt. I'm a dirt lover and a dirt eater. So I love soil, and Mother Earth shares her nutrients with us in many magical ways. So I came to this work through that mixed race heritage, and really want to share with you the story a little bit of how the Cultural Conservancy developed our Native Foodways program and our seed keeping program, really based on the story of a group of urban intertribal mixed race Indians in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay areas who just needed good earth to get their hands in, and to bring back those seeds from their families, and to learn more about their cultural traditions, their heritage, and really to make ourselves whole again. You know, that word remember is to put ourselves back together again. And as Robin Kimmerer tells us, we need to remember because of the waves and disruption of colonization over centuries. We were taught, you know, my mom went to boarding school as well, and many generations who went through the boarding school tragedy were taught to forget. So it is really a revolutionary act, a political act, to remember our seed relatives and all our ancestors again in a good way. So I want to start by showing a 30-minute little video clip, if my technology is going to work today. We are very honored to be part of a show called Tending Nature, KCET from Los Angeles, and they did a 30-minute TV episode on Native Foodways with the Cultural Conservancy. Actually, Sarah, you may be better at this than I am. Do you want to try to pull that up? Or I could try.
I'm not sure that I have all of the technology set for it, but as you work on it.
Let's see here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you sharing the trailer?
Let's see, what's that? Oh, good. Yeah, the trailer. Oh, great. I found it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me just call it up. And Sarah, please respond or share any other aspects of our foodways work and seed work while I get this up.
Absolutely. Well, we were really honored to host KCET during, honestly, the pandemic. It was an unusual experience. They were reaching out to talk about, their Tending Nature series and really diving into the Indigenous landscape. And one of the things that we found is part of our food work on the ground over this last year was really if there was ever a time to nourish and feed community, that living where we are in the ground and our kind of urban, rural, borderland work that we are based on here in the San Francisco Bay Area, we realize that our communities, though historically often are living in food deserts, even more so happened during the time of the pandemic, where there was little to no access to good quality food before for our demographic. There really was no access anymore. And so the work that we were doing on the ground and that many cultural groups across the country are doing in their local gardens, the work that Shiloh's doing with the regeneration of seeds and the rematriation of seeds in native, again, community gardens or tribal group gardens. This is important work. It's not just about the reviolation of the seeds, it's about the nourishing of communities and bringing back not just kind of spiritual nutrition and cultural nutrition, but honestly the nuts and bolts of daily life and living nutrition. And that is an important storyscape. So it was just an honor to really have them come out and walk the fields with us and get to know our team a little bit. So thank you, Melissa. It looks great. Yeah.
All right, I'll try it now. Oop, oop. So just short and sweet, but it gives you a taste of our two farms. The Cultural Conservancy has been very fortunate to work at the Indian Valley Organic Farm and Garden at the College of Marin in Novato in Coast Miwok territory over the last 8 years. And it's just been a joy to have clean organic soil to invite the urban indigenous community of the larger San Francisco Bay Area to come and share seeds and grow good food with us. And at the time we had a lovely, incredible young Seneca leader working with us, Kaylina Bray. She had just moved from New York to California as a young woman, and her family was worried about her in the big city and all by herself, but we soon met and became family. And when her family came to visit her and kind of check on her, they said, you know, we don't want you to be lonely out here, so we want to give you your Oneogan, your Seneca white corn, so that you can have your food relative with you to tend to and to look after and to teach our ways to your community here in the Bay Area. And that was just such a beautiful, profound experience of having her family, the Bray family, come and do a number of teachings with us, sharing what's known as Iroquois white corn or Seneca white corn that really Rowan is a caretaker of and guardian of and expert on. And we didn't know a lot about it, but the San Francisco Bay Area has a number of Haudenosaunee Six Nations people out here due to relocation. Like my mom, how a Chippewa woman ended up in Yuki territory due to relocation. And so we were able to plant that seed and grow it in a very different climate. And it took several generations for the white corn to adapt to a hotter, drier climate with very different rain seasons. Our rains come in the winter, not in the summer. But after a couple of generations of good work and love, that seed that you saw in the video is flourishing. And thanks to good farmers like Maya Harjo and Ben Schleffer, this past season, even during the pandemic, or maybe because of the pandemic, I don't know what, but our corn was so prolific this past year. It really grew very abundantly and very strongly. It gave us a lot of source of nourishment. So that's one simple seed story of how a family really gifted it to their daughter and to our community, the Cultural Conservancy community. And then they came out and taught harvesting, cooking, the green corn harvest, different ceremonial practices associated with being caretakers of Oneogan. And every year we gift it to Haudenosaunee elders throughout the Bay Area who have a deep relationship to that seed. So that's one really important story I wanted to share. And then I'm going to try some slides now while Sarah, if you want to share any more, because you met Oneogan through our Foodways program too.
I did, and that was a very, as you were talking, Melissa, really the model of what it meant for Kaylina to come out, for her parents to give her an ancestral seed so that she wasn't lonely, so that she could hear the voice of the ancestors, you know, as she walks the field in the wind and you know, runs her hand through the corn, is such an important dialogue. And it's really one that we see time and time again in our Foodways program. I myself had a similar experience when, for the first time, we got our hands on some yaqui gourd seeds, and went and, you know, planted those seeds and sang a song and you know, waited to see what would happen. Because really, you know, one of the things we have to reflect on is that many of us, you know, we are guests. Though Yaqui I am, you know, I am in the San Francisco Bay Area. This is not my traditional territory. These are not my birthlands. These are not my ancestral spaces. And yet, as you're saying so eloquently, Melissa, through relocations and some really, you know, painful histories, we're quite separated from our lands. We're quite separated from our capacity to re-engage with those stories. And really what the gift of the farm that we have been partnered in over the last number of years, and now the gift of a farm that we are able to grow and land tend of our own, is really about those connections. It's really about bringing those stories alive again. And, you know, it's really something when we can bring young Native youth out there and walk the fields and they see a squash or a zucchini and they say, "What's that?" And you say, "Hey, that's, you know, that's an ancestral relative of yours. There's a story there that binds you to the relationality that you have with this world, and you can find it through that squash." And they go, "Really?" And I go, "Yeah, and it's yummy too." You know, and it's a whole different dialogue, and it's one that really inspires you to move forward.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that great story. I have here, I think you can see the iconic seed spiral of the Cultural Conservancy's logo, which is a wooden platter made by one of our artists in residence, a Polynesian man. And in it, we use it as a kind of a sacred food platter for offerings and for sharing. And here we have the beautiful strawberries that is so important to Native Americans, as Rowan mentioned in our creation stories. And so many stories, the first fruits of the land that show up, show their beautiful faces and hearts in the forest in the springtime. So the strawberry is really important to us. And then there's also the acorn, something incredibly important as well to most Native peoples on Turtle Island, but especially for Native California Indian people here in the land we call California today. And so these seeds are extraordinarily significant to our people. And going back to our creation and our migration stories, which Shiloh shared very beautifully about our Manomen. And I want to also share that seeds are related to what we often call our biodiversity through our languages. The Manomen is literally means etymologically the good grain or the good seed or the good berry. And because it really gave us our new homeland when we had to leave the East Coast, it has such an element of strength to us and goodness in supporting life. Likewise, the strawberry is called Odeamin. You hear that min again. Ode means heart, and it is the heartberry. And it has so many different stories and vocabularies of love and kindness and that reciprocal, that reverential reciprocal relationship with our lands and our seeds and our plants. And then corn, which came to us late. We're northern people, Anishinaabe, way up north, came to us later from our southern relatives. And it's mandamin, like the Mandan people of central North Dakota. And it means the wonder grain because we hadn't seen it. You know, it doesn't grow organically out of the forest or the Great Lakes. It has to be brought and cultivated by human hands. And it grows so tall, and it was the wonder seed. And we have some powerful stories also about when mandamin came to our people, the wonder grain, because it's just such a extraordinary plant and giver of life. So I just want to make that point that embedded within our seeds, our grains, our berries are these stories in our language and these lessons and these relationships. The vocabulary of relationship that Robin Kimmerer calls the grammar of animacy, right? The grammar of animacy. So moving on to another California Indian seed, amin. This is an incredible, beautiful seed or plant. Has many names: bay laurel, California laurel, bay nut, pepper nut, has many different common names. But this true laurel plant, related actually to the avocado, makes these little baby avocados in the fall time. And this is a really important seed source for the local Ohlone, Kosniwak, Pomo, Maidu, Yurok, Karuk, North Coast people where this tree grows. And we've been very fortunate to gather this and share it with the first peoples of this land. We don't gather it for ourselves as much. We gather it for the first people because it is their traditional food. And in that sense, we honor their food sovereignty. Even though we have Native heritage, as Sarah mentioned earlier, we are still visitors here in someone else's land. So we really honor those traditions. And we've learned so much from our California Native relatives about tending the wild land care, or what's often called indigenous land management, with prescribed burning and pruning and coppicing and utilizing those honorable harvest practices when we gather and sing to these beautiful seeds. And I want to tell you a little story now about acorns. There's many different stories about acorns. Mitigomin in Anishinaabe Moen in our language, the tree seed or the tree berry or the tree nut. And this is a story of when I was very honored to be a part of the Indigenous Terra Madre gathering in Ainu territory in Japan. And it was really wonderful to be a witness and participant of this intertribal and intercultural solidarity building through seed sharing. When Makam Hum, the Ohlone Cafe, Vincent Medina brought over some beautiful acorns that he received also from one of his aunties to share with the Ainu people in Japan who knew that they were traditional acorn people. There's many species species of oaks also in northern Japan and Hokkaido, but they had really been cut off due to colonization from their traditional gathering sites and their traditions. Very much similar to what happened here in the US and Turtle Island. A lot of racism, exclusion, marginalization. And so the Ainu people knew that they had acorn food traditions, but many of them had never tasted it. And so Vince and Louis Trevino of Loni Cafe brought over acorns, and we went through a we didn't speak the same language. They didn't speak Ohlone, and obviously Ohlone didn't speak Ainu, but they spoke their own languages, and many of us were there to support this exchange of this sacred acorn seed and to learn how the Ohlone people traditionally processed it and cooked it and feasted it. And that the amount of love and friendship and kinship was just immeasurable. And we're still in touch with the Ainu community there, and they have some new skills and new understandings, and are more inspired to really remember and revitalize some of their own acorn traditions. And that was really facilitated through the larger Indigenous Terra Madre network. When we used to meet in person, we can't do that as much anymore. And that happened right in the fall of 2019 before the pandemic. So I feel so privileged to have been a witness and participant and mild contributor to the power of seeds to unite people across the planet and really show us our common humanity and our responsibility to these seeds in future generations. So with that, I will say Chi-miigwech, thank you so much for listening, and look forward to any further dialogue or conversation with you all.
Melissa and Sarah, thank you so much for that. Thank you for reminding us the importance of remembering and eating dirt. That really resonated with me. But you know, what resonated with me was of the white corn and how it was almost as if it responded to the hardship caused by the pandemic by being that much more bountiful with her gifts. That like gave me shivers. What a fantastic story. I'm sure there's a lot of questions for you guys as well. So if we could ask all of the panelists to join us here, we could do a little bit of a Q&A and have a group circle chat about all these great stories, if we could, please. Fantastic. First question that I have here is for Maymet. And Andrew would like to know, Maymet, what is the perfect eggplant called? And how can we get some?
I think there's no perfect eggplant. It's just, you know, it's a term that I use that I was so tired of eating these bitter, seedy eggplant that I found in the grocery stores in the United States that didn't resonate anything like what I growing up ate. But the eggplant journey started with that variety from originally from northern Syria, which is has been stewarded by the people of the region, not only northern Syrians, but also southeastern Anatolian people. So that's called Halep Karası, which translates into Black Aleppo. So it has a dark skin, long fruits, fleshy, and it's tradition. Eggplant is tradition. You know, it's not a straightforward vegetable, I think, because you know what are you gonna do with eggplant, right? Are you gonna boil it? You know, it doesn't sound really very appealing, or you know, but it can transform into a very beautiful, you know, flavorful vegetable when it's processed right, I think. And a very common way of using it is to grill the whole fruit with the skin intact. Char the skin and, you know, on open fire, and then crack it and just eat it off the fruit. and put some salt and olive oil maybe, or make it into a salad, yogurt salad, full fat yogurt, not any diet yogurt that when I first came here, that I had to eat, some of those sweet yogurt like things, which was part of the frustration initially, but and with garlic. So, and I think that's one eggplant to begin with. Hopefully I can revitalize it again. We have some seeds left that we can propagate. I'm kind of nervous about, but.
Do you have seeds available for that on your website currently if we were interested in getting some?
No, our eggplant collection is devastated. I have the foundation seed stock, so that's every seed saver is very very careful about that. Keeping it seed stock secure so that the variety is still safe. But hopefully we can share it soon again.
I hope so too, because I'd like to try that. All right, so the next question here is, let's go with, here's one for Charlie. Sarah asked, she says that she comes from Egypt, where they have some of the oldest wheat, and one of their biggest challenges is in the storage of wheat and the amount of aflatoxins that start to grow on it. So she's curious to know what techniques you use to alleviate this, or do you just consume all your wheat immediately?
Yeah, so here in Wisconsin, we have a bit of a challenge. Wheat is a dry land crop. Classically, it was in kind of the dry areas of Turkey and Anatolia, and of course, Egypt is a very dry place too. So I'm in a temperate climate, but of course, I'm also in the 21st century. So we have blowers and we have concrete foundations and things like that. So as long as you pay attention, it's strange to me. I'm kind of a new wheat farmer. I mean, I've only been doing this seriously for 10 years and 20 years total, but most farmers do not have a moisture meter. And today they're like a $200 item. It's really easy. And every farmer should know what the moisture level of their wheat is. And it's really easy to do. You just plug it in there and push the button. And once it's dry enough, it's very safe, but you got to get it down to 12% humidity.
That's a good tip. So getting a moisture meter, that's
Yep.
the key.
Get a moisture meter.
All right, let's see. Now we'll have a question from Melissa and Sarah. This is from Julian. Julian is so excited to learn about the work, getting land for urban dwellers in the Bay Area. What parts of your model can easily be shared to others in other areas?
Hey, thanks for the question. Well, there are many other models. I know Shiloh could speak about one too. Dream of Wild Earth in Minneapolis. They also have urban native gardens and also have a relationship with farms outside of the city. Like ours is about 20 miles, so about a half an hour drive, depending on traffic, which is close enough that urban communities can access. We've also been involved with many smaller urban gardens right in San Francisco, right in downtown Oakland. So there's a massive kind of guerrilla farming movement happening in urban areas by Native and BIPOC communities, Black farmers as well. So there's really no shortage. If you look at Seattle or Denver, Albuquerque, I know more the West, I'm city, there's quite a few models of urban Indian communities revitalizing their seeds and foodways in small community farms, often partnering with university farms, teaching farms like we have, or partnering with land trusts or commercial farms by getting a small plot of land to grow our three sisters of Native American agriculture or our other heirloom seeds. So it is a replicable model. It's already happening in many other places. I know also in Canada, in Vancouver, there's also a similar move with urban intertribal indigenous peoples having foodways and seed libraries that they're sharing out with each other. It's just kind of a grassroots underground movement, and maybe it's time we start well, we're sharing it here as part of a seed story, but there are some other good models like Dream of Wild health in Minneapolis and Cultural Conservancy in the San Francisco Bay Area. And you can look to our website or those websites. Anything else you'd like to add, Sarah or Shiloh?
I think, Melissa, the one thing I would do is maybe elevate a little bit more, maybe lean into a little bit more what you were talking about in terms of the necessity for the allyships and the partnerships, especially with the land trusts and kind of the rematriating of land or the returning of land. Because you just have to face it. If you're serving urban, rural, more urban communities, land access and water access is non-existent. So if you are trying to work inside of a model that is elevating those knowledge systems inside of those landscapes, you have to work in allyships. You really do. There's something about, this nod to recreating our communities of trade, our trade routes, our traditional economies. These kinds of topics are really important when it comes to looking at what it means to revitalize these models inside of these contexts, because you need your Segurite Land Trust down the road who is working with individuals and organizations that are interested in getting land access back to Indigenous peoples, and then partnering with the Cultural Conservancy to get to those seed libraries, and then partnering with the universities to get the grants and the funding and all of that knowledge system pulled together to help elevate it into a larger circle. So again, it's not just about, as Melissa's saying, what TCC is doing or Shiloh's group is doing alone in her area. It's really about that network and what it means to elevate that system at a larger level that makes it replicable and accessible for everyone else to see and get to and really dive into with us. Yeah.
I would just add to that, I feel like there are places that are starting to have this conversation or have been having it for a while, but thinking about alternative models of land tenure, because not everyone wants to relate to land and property ownership. Like, that's really antithetical to a lot of people's values, or many people's values. And so, and there are people that want to do things cooperatively, and the way that the system works right now, it makes that very difficult for people to do. And so locally, people can be engaging multiple different groups in that conversation of what does cooperative land tenure or community land tenure look like for us.
Well, we have a comment here in the
Thank you.
ethno-agriculture that I think sums it up pretty well too. That it is a lifelong project to create and maintain these alliances and partnerships. And I think that's so true, because it's not an instant thing. There's a lot of collaboration, like Sarah was saying, a lot that goes into bringing these voices out. So maybe this summit is a good place to bring some like-minded folks together to help get some of those things moving, put those pieces together for more communities. So that's really good. We have two more questions here as of now. So the first one is for Jeff. It's a little more lighthearted. Can a Jersey tomato be grown out as well in other states? Or is it something about the South Jersey soil that makes them so good?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think it's a combination of both. If you look at the history of food production here, tomato canning and Campbell soup drove a lot of breeding for tomatoes here in South Jersey. And there were also three major experimental farms here for three large seed companies: Johnson & Stokes, which is now the Stokes Seed Company; WM Mall, which is now out of business, and Burpee had a farm here as well. So there was a lot of breeding and a lot of selection for taste and disease resistance, and for tomatoes that will thrive well in the soil. So I've never been out of state and never gardened out of state, so I can't comment whether they would grow as well in another soil. But talking to some of the farmers here in the work that I do, they will tell you it is the soil. And there's one farmer down the road from me that insists that they don't stake their tomatoes. They let the tomatoes grow on the ground or stay on the ground, because in their point of view, the taste comes from them sitting in the soil. And then there's another region or another area in South Jersey, Hamilton, which it grows a lot of blueberries. They refer to their soil as a sugar sand because of the amount of sugar that ends up in the tomatoes that are grown in your region. So I think a lot of it is attributed to the tomato breeding history here.
That's interesting. You know, something's to be said for the terroir. Certainly, you know, the mineral content of each individual soil. I can't imagine leaving my tomatoes just sitting on the ground like that. That's not something I'd feel comfortable doing. But I see the beginnings of what could be a multi-state collaborative tomato taste test. We just have to share some of your seeds with us, Jeff, and then we could.
I'm all for it, man. Tomatoes are life for me, so let's do it. I'm happy to do that. And you know, it's interesting. I agree with you about leaving the tomatoes on the soil. You know, I get tomatoes from this farm all the time, even though I grow my own, because they're just these big, beautiful beefsteaks, and they're so good. So you know, and I want to always support local farmers as well. So one year I decided to try it, and I tried letting the tomatoes, you know, sit on the soil, and it was a bloody mess, and I would never do that again. I don't know how they pull it off, but they do it, and I'm always gonna trust the farmer, always. Never gonna question a farmer's wisdom, because you know they're the ones who they're doing the real work out there.
Maybe they're just trying to get you to have to buy their tomatoes. One last question. It's for Maymet. Let's see, where's it at here? Oh, why is the Turkish government so interested in controlling what seeds that people grow? That's a good one to end on today.
I have to get to the fisherman session. I agreed to help them out with some moderating over there. So thank you very much, everyone. I don't need to jump in, but yeah, let's all talk about a multi-state tomato test. I'm for it. So, and thank you, everyone, for attending and for speaking. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff.
I think that would be about gatekeeping and financial interests, because certifying seeds makes sure that certain seed companies can sell the certified seeds. So, and then these people are usually business people who are connected with the Turkish government. And that helps also the hybrid seed industry, which involves a lot of imported seed from Europe, specifically Holland and, you know, some other countries. So yeah, and gentrification also is involved with that. Promising people of farms, you know, the people who live in the villages, that, you know, there's a better life outside villages, and so basically encouraging them to, you know, creating new neighborhoods, expanding neighborhoods, and merging them with bigger settlements and such, and shrinking farmland, basically messing up with everything about agriculture, and then bringing the country who used to produce a majority of the, let's say, lentils of the people in the country consumed, getting imported from countries far, far away, specifically from, actually, I think Turkish government is now importing from Canada. So, and then reliance, you know, basically destroying the self-reliance of communities. So it's all connected. It's a very complicated topic that sometimes you know, I cannot sleep at nights, but that's why knowing that some of these seeds are not really stewarded anywhere else makes me quite nervous, you know, like the concept of being able to pack all the seeds in a few bags and just leaving, you know, like if there's an emergency and such, it's just a huge relief because of that, securing that collection. So, but long story short, there's a lot of financial interest in that, financial interest of a few privileged people, and yeah.
Yeah, that highlights it, Maymet. I think that says it all, and I think that really is a great way to wrap this up, because that just the weight of the significance of the work that all of you are doing in all of your communities, for all of these reasons, it is so powerful and so important. So I just appreciate you guys all so much for being a part of this. If this is the first day of the summit, imagine what the next 6 days are going to have in store. I know that on Saturday is a big deep dive into genetically modified crops and who owns the seeds. So really follows right into what we're talking about here, how we're wrapping this up. So again, Sarah, Melissa, Maymet, Charlie, and Shiloh, thank you all so much for being a part of this panel. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Enjoy. Thank you. Good to see you.